What if I told you that the performance rating you got last year, the one that determined your bonus, your promotion, and maybe even your self-esteem, was mathematically proven to be a reflection of your manager's personality?
Yeah, rather than your actual work,
Mm-hmm.
which is just wild to think about.
It really is. I mean, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are unpacking a truly fascinating paper by Dr. Jonathan H. Westover.
Right. And he's analyzing this 2026 framework created by a researcher named Ilich.
Exactly. It's called the Integrated Personnel Evaluation Model, or IPM. And our mission today for this deep dive is to understand exactly how we might finally fix the universally dreaded, just fundamentally broken system of the annual performance review.
Which I think everyone can relate to dreading.
Oh, absolutely. So, okay, let's unpack this. We are living in a digital age, right? We're doing this highly dynamic, knowledge-intensive work, but we are still evaluating people using logic from, like, 1920s assembly lines.
The disconnect there is just severe. I mean, in an industrial setting, evaluating performance was purely quantitative.
Right, like counting things.
Exactly. You literally counted the number of widgets someone assembled in an hour.
Mm.
But today,
Mm.
you are asking people to generate ideas, collaborate across time zones, pivot during crises.
Yeah, it's completely different work.
It is.
Yeah.
Yet organizations are still trying to capture that complex, multidimensional reality using a simplistic 1 to 5 rating scale once a year.
Which implies something pretty staggering, honestly. Like, when my boss sits down to give me a 3 out of 5 on, I don't know, collaboration, that number is largely a psychological profile of my boss.
Yes.
Not a reflection of my actual collaboration skills. I was looking at this research from the year 2000 that the paper cites, and the methodology there is just wild.
Oh, the variance analysis study.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one is a cornerstone in organizational psychology.
Right, because they didn't just ask people how they felt, they mathematically isolated where these scores actually come from.
Yeah, what they did was look at thousands of evaluations where multiple managers rated the exact same employees. And by running this variance analysis, they partitioned a performance score into 3 distinct buckets. So you have the employee's actual performance, random measurement error, and then what they called rater-specific effects.
Rater-specific effects, that's the bias part, right?
Exactly. And the findings showed that a supervisor's own cognitive biases account for as much, and sometimes even more, of the variance in the score than the employee's true performance.
Wow. We should probably define those biases because, I mean, they happen to all of us.
Sure, yeah.
You're talking about things like the halo effect, where, because an employee is a great public speaker, the boss unconsciously assumes they are also great at project management.
Right. They just get a glow that covers everything they do.
Exactly. Or recency bias is a big one, where the manager only remembers the project you delivered last week, completely forgetting the massive crisis you solved 8 months ago.
Or it could just be even simpler baseline tendencies, like some managers are just constitutionally lenient.
They just want to be the cool boss.
Right. They want everyone to like them, so they give everyone 4s and 5s. But then other managers think giving a perfect score means there is no room for improvement, so they artificially cap everyone at a 3.
Which is so frustrating.
It really is. When you rely on a single supervisor's episodic judgment, you aren't measuring an employee's output. You are capturing a highly subjective perception filtered through the manager's personal idiosyncrasies, delivered at a highly stressful point in the year.
It's like being graded by a driving instructor who only looks at what you did in the last 5 minutes of a year-long road trip.
That is a great way to put it.
Right, because you could drive 10,000 miles perfectly, but if you park slightly crooked while pulling into the final driveway, you get a failing grade for the entire journey.
Yeah, and if we look at the psychological fallout of that dynamic, it completely explains why everyone hates review season.
Oh, for sure.
When a review is a zero-sum game, and your mortgage payment or your bonus depends on that flawed rating, you just go into defense mode.
Because the stakes are so high.
Right. Researchers call this impression management. The biological threat response literally gets activated. If admitting a mistake or asking for help might lower your arbitrary score from a 4 to a 3, you stop being honest.
You hide your struggles.
Exactly.
And think about your own workplace for a second, as you're listening. Have you ever buried a mistake or pretended to understand a new software system just because you didn't want to look incompetent before quarterly reviews?
I think we all have.
Yeah. And that instinct destroys psychological safety, that shared belief that a team is safe for interpersonal risk-taking.
And without psychological safety, learning just stops completely. The paper makes it really clear that this isn't just a fluffy HR problem. This is a catastrophic financial leak.
A financial leak? How so?
Well, research demonstrates that organizations falling into the bottom quartile of employee engagement, which, by the way, is heavily correlated with these punitive evaluation systems, they suffered from significantly higher turnover and lower profitability.
Oh, wow. So it directly hits the bottom line.
Yeah. Top quartile companies operate with roughly 20% higher profitability, simply because their people aren't wasting all this cognitive energy playing defense against their own managers.
Okay, so if the supervisor's brain is a flawed measuring tool, the obvious reflex is to just measure everything with hard data, right? Just take the biased human out of the loop.
That is the temptation, yes.
But as the IPM framework points out, just dumping raw data into the process doesn't fix anything. It just gives you a highly quantified bad system. We need to measure the right things.
Right. And that leads directly into layer one of the framework, which is the concept of multidimensional HR metrics.
Multidimensional, meaning not just one number.
Exactly. Traditionally, organizations just measure output. Like in software engineering, a legacy metric might just be code velocity, basically how fast you write code.
Right, widgets per hour, basically.
Right. But in a multidimensional ecosystem, you evaluate inputs and processes alongside that output. You start measuring an engineer's participation in code reviews, their responsiveness to debugging other people's work, their knowledge sharing within the team.
So you capture the broader context of how they actually function.
Exactly, the whole picture.
But wait, I have to challenge the setup a bit, because if we transition from measuring one simple output to measuring bugs, code speed, teamwork, mentoring, and responsiveness, aren't we just creating a massive administrative burden?
It can definitely feel that way.
Like, if I have 10 metrics deciding my bonus instead of one, I'm just going to figure out how to game all 10. I'll do the bare minimum of mentoring just to tick the box, you know?
The friction you are describing is exactly why these metrics fail when they are just imposed from the top down. If a manager unilaterally hands you a spreadsheet of 10 new behavioral targets, your natural reaction is resentment and gaming the system.
Right, because I had no say in it.
Exactly. The framework addresses this by requiring participatory goal setting. It's rooted in foundational goal-setting theory. Basically, people only commit to targets they actually help create.
Okay, that makes sense in theory, but in practice, bosses have structural power. If my boss asks me to collaborate on a goal, I usually just nod and agree to whatever they wanted anyway.
Sure, that power dynamic is real.
So how does a company actually shift that?
The source provides a very concrete mechanism for this, using a global professional services firm as an example.
Okay.
In that industry, billable hours are historically the ultimate non-negotiable metric. But this firm actually abandoned imposed billable hour quotas entirely.
Wait, really? A professional services firm dropped billable hours?
They did. Instead, they implemented collaboratively established objectives and key results, or OKRs. So a partner and an associate sit down at the start of a quarter. They look at the firm's overarching goals, and the associate defines how they will uniquely contribute.
Ah, so they have a voice in it.
Right. Not just in client billing, but perhaps by streamlining a workflow or mentoring a junior analyst. The negotiation itself shifts the psychological contract.
From evaluative to developmental.
Exactly. It moves from an evaluative stance of hit this number or else to a developmental stance of what impact are we trying to make and how will we track our shared progress.
Okay, so you have agency over your own measuring stick. I can see how that reduces the urge to game the system.
Because you built the system.
Right. But the logistics of this are just daunting. If every employee is setting multidimensional OKRs, tracking inputs, processes, and outputs, human managers will completely drown in that data.
Oh, absolutely.
A manager with 8 direct reports literally cannot process that volume of information objectively, which means we are forced to bring in computational help, right?
And that introduces layer 2. AI-enabled people analytics. The sheer volume of multidimensional data requires machine learning to synthesize it into anything actionable.
It's where it gets really interesting, but also a little terrifying. Are we just building a digital panopticon here?
It's a valid fear.
Because deploying AI to monitor inputs and processes sounds dangerously close to, like, tracking keystrokes and mouse movements.
And it is a massive risk if implemented poorly. Disciplinary surveillance destroys trust instantly. But the IPM framework strongly advocates for using AI predictively and developmentally, not punitively.
Okay, give me an example of that.
Sure. Consider a large financial institution mentioned in the text.
Yeah.
They utilize machine learning algorithms to identify high-performing employees who are at an elevated risk of quitting.
Okay.
And they could identify this a full 6 months before those employees actually resigned.
The math behind that is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Because the algorithm isn't just looking at their salary, right? It's looking for correlations that humans literally cannot see.
Exactly. The mechanism is pattern recognition across vast data sets. The AI analyzes historical performance data, compensation positioning relative to the market, promotion velocity.
All the standard HR stuff.
Right, but also learning and development metrics, and even the structural metadata of their manager check-ins.
Wait, metadata of check-ins? Like what?
Well, it might notice a microscopic pattern, like when a high performer goes 18 months without a promotion, and their biweekly one-on-one meetings drop from 30 minutes to 12 minutes, their flight risk spikes by 80%.
Oh, wow. So it notices they aren't talking to their boss as much.
Yes, a human manager managing 20 people completely misses that subtle shift. The AI spots it immediately.
And crucially, the company didn't use that insight to punish the employee. They used it to intervene.
Exactly. Business partners proactively initiated career conversations. They explored new lateral moves, they offered development opportunities, or they adjusted compensation proactively.
Just stepping in before it's too late.
Right. And that algorithmic intervention saved the company millions in preventable turnover and recruitment costs.
That is wild. But there is another AI application in the source material that I found even more compelling, specifically regarding the human bias we talked about earlier.
The natural language processing exam.
Yes. Because, the research showed managers are biased, and I always assumed AI would just inherit those biases from the training data.
That happens a lot, yes.
But there was a global consulting firm that actually used NLP, natural language processing, to audit and correct their human managers.
Yeah, the use of NLP to parse narrative text is incredibly powerful. This firm pointed their algorithm at the written performance review comments submitted by managers across the organization.
So they were reading the actual reviews.
Right. The AI wasn't evaluating the employees, it was auditing the evaluators. And it uncovered a systemic, unconscious gender bias.
How does the AI actually detect that in a block of text, though?
It analyzes semantic patterns and vocabulary distribution. The AI revealed that men and women were receiving the exact same numerical ratings on paper.
Okay.
But the language used to justify those ratings was entirely split by gender. Women were consistently praised for their communication style, their collaboration, and being great team players.
Okay, and the men?
Men with identical scores were praised for their strategic thinking, their vision, and their leadership potential.
Oh, wow. That is, wow. So the women were being handed the vocabulary of a support role, while the men were being handed the vocabulary required for an executive promotion.
Exactly. Even though their actual performance output was mathematically equal.
That's incredible that the AI could spot that.
Well, the algorithmic audit made the invisible visible. Humans reading individual reviews missed the macro pattern. The AI saw it across thousands of documents.
And they used that to fix the problem.
Yeah, the firm used that data to radically revise its evaluator guidance and retrain its managers. We tend to fear AI automating evaluation, but in this case, it was deployed specifically to identify and neutralize human prejudice.
But here's the friction, right? The AI can process the data, it can spot the gender bias, it can flag the employee who is about to quit. But an algorithm cannot sit in a conference room, look a burned-out employee in the eye, and have a vulnerable conversation about their career trajectory. AI makes the data smart, but data doesn't mean anything if the delivery mechanism is cold.
And that transitions us into the critical human element of the framework layer 3, which is empathy-led leadership.
Right.
You can have flawlessly objective metrics and the most sophisticated predictive analytics on the planet. But if the manager delivering those insights is rigid, defensive, or lacks basic emotional intelligence, the employee's threat response triggers anyway.
And the whole system collapses.
Exactly.
But I mean, be more empathetic sounds great on a corporate motivational poster. How does an organization actually operationalize that? How do you force a boss to be empathetic?
Well, you operationalize it by completely changing the cadence and structure of the feedback. The source details a healthcare organization that dismantled their annual review process entirely.
Just throw it out.
Completely. They replaced it with continuous microfeedback. Managers were retrained to deliver brief, specific, behavior-focused observations in the flow of daily work.
So instead of saving it all up for a stressful meeting in December.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was strictly framed developmentally. If a nurse made an error, the manager didn't say, your performance is slipping.
Which would trigger that defense mode.
Right. Instead, they were trained to use a specific empathetic framework. Here is what I noticed, here is the impact it had on the patient, and here's how we can adjust the process next time.
It's basically the difference between getting an annual physical from a doctor who hands you a terrifying chart of everything wrong with your blood work
Yeah.
versus having a fitness coach standing next to you at the gym, quietly correcting your posture before you lift.
That's a perfect analogy.
The stakes are completely lowered.
And lowering the stakes changes the brain's chemistry in the moment. The nurses in that healthcare study stopped anticipating judgment and started anticipating coaching. Their psychological safety metrics soared, and consequently, turnover plummeted.
Yeah.
But to your earlier question about accountability, like how do you make managers do this?
Right.
Empathy cannot be treated as a personality quirk. It has to be a measurable competency.
Are companies actually grading managers on empathy, though?
They are. The professional services firm we discussed earlier, they develops others through empathetic coaching, a formal weighted criterion in a manager's overall assessment.
You're kidding. How much was it weighted?
It accounted for 20% of their performance evaluation.
Wow. 20% just for being a good coach?
Yeah. They provided structured training in perspective taking and active listening, and they utilized 360-degree feedback, meaning the direct reports confidentially rated the manager's ability to provide supportive coaching.
So the employees held the boss accountable.
Exactly. If a manager hit all their financial targets but failed the empathy metrics, they were not promoted, period.
So we are looking at a completely integrated system here. We have multidimensional OKRs that the employee helps design. We have AI crunching the inputs and auditing for bias. And we have human managers acting as continuous empathetic coaches.
That's the IPEM framework in a nutshell.
But how does a company tie all of this together into a daily reality that doesn't just burn people out? I mean, tracking all of this sounds exhausting.
The unifying metric, and this is a major focal point in contemporary organizational research, is employee well-being.
Okay, well-being.
The old paradigm treated well-being as a peripheral HR benefit. A subscription to a meditation app or a yoga class on Fridays.
Right, checking a box.
But the integrated framework recognizes well-being as a fundamental driver of sustainable performance.
And the research by Deneve and colleagues proves this, right? I mean, it draws a direct line between well-being and actual firm profitability.
It does. Because when employees are chronically stressed, their cognitive function physically degrades, they make more errors, their creative problem-solving drops, and their collaboration becomes brittle.
It makes sense.
Traditional evaluation systems push for maximum output until the employee breaks, and then the company just absorbs the cost of replacing them. The new paradigm measures recovery as rigorously as it measures output.
What does that actually look like in practice, though? How do you measure recovery without just, monitoring people's sleep, which would be super creepy?
Yeah, we don't want that. A tech company cited in the research executed this by completely decoupling evaluation from presenteeism.
Presenteeism meaning the butts and seats mentality. Showing up early and staying late just so the boss sees you in your desk.
Yes, rewarding visibility instead of value. This company eliminated any tracking of working hours, location, or mandatory meeting attendance.
Wait, no required hours at all?
None. They evaluated their employees purely on the outcomes achieved and the quality of their collaborative contributions.
So how do they know if someone is burning out?
The company monitors workload sustainability using aggregate well-being metrics. They track if teams are actually utilizing their paid time off. Managers conduct check-ins focused on capacity, not hours logged.
I see.
They trust the employees to manage their own energy. Whether you work early mornings to accommodate childcare or you prefer deep work late at night, as long as the negotiated outcomes are delivered, there is no evaluation penalty for when or where the work happens.
That requires a monumental shift in organizational trust.
It really does.
We are talking about moving away from an evaluative contract where the company acts as a judge and the employee acts as a defendant to a true developmental contract where both parties are aligned on growth.
Right.
But because we are heavily relying on AI to parse the data in this model, that trust has to be protected by strict governance.
Absolutely. The psychological shift demands structural protection. You cannot blindly trust an algorithm with someone's livelihood. This is where the concept of algorithmic governance becomes critical.
Because if the machine learning model makes a mathematical error and decides my performance is trending downward, I need a way to defend myself.
Exactly. The European Union's AI Act has heavily influenced how companies handle this. Organizations deploying these systems must establish fairness committees and adhere to strict explainability standards.
Meaning they have to be able to explain why the AI made a decision.
Yes, but the most vital feature for the individual employee is a contestability mechanism.
Meaning I have the structural right to argue with the computer.
You have the right to challenge the algorithm's output. If the analytics flag you for an intervention or suggest a dip in collaborative metrics, the contestability mechanism allows you to demand a human review.
Because the AI doesn't know everything.
Right. You might provide contextual information the AI couldn't possibly know, a personal crisis, a sudden shift in project scope, a conflict with a vendor. The AI serves as a diagnostic tool, a co-pilot for the manager. It is never the final judge.
So let's bring this all home. The ultimate takeaway from Dr. Westover's analysis of this framework is incredibly optimistic, really.
Very much so.
The future of work isn't a dystopian choice between the cold surveillance of an algorithm and the biased, subjective judgment of a human manager. It's about seamlessly integrating the strengths of both.
That's exactly it.
We leverage the multidimensional data and the AI to strip away our blind spots and see the true picture of performance. And we rely on empathetic human leadership to deliver that insight in a way that honors the developmental contract.
Performance evaluation finally stops being a weapon and becomes an actual tool for capability building.
Which takes the most anxiety-inducing event on the corporate calendar and transforms it into a continuous, supportive dialogue.
Which is what it always should have been.
Right. Which hopefully means the next time that calendar invite pops into your inbox, your stomach doesn't drop.
We can hope.
But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on what we've discussed today. We've established that AI is incredible at analyzing performance, and that humans are absolutely necessary for delivering that feedback with emotional safety.
Right.
But as natural language processing advances and algorithms become vastly better at mimicking human emotion, patience, and conversational nuance, what happens when an employee actually prefers getting their developmental coaching from a perfectly objective, infinitely patient algorithm rather than their well-meaning but inevitably flawed human manager?
That is the frontier we are rapidly approaching.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the future of performance evaluation. We'll see you next time.